Altovise Love-Craighead, captain of the 16th Police District, Philadelphia Police Department, and co-victim of homicide. I couldn't say it was an aha moment because I was thrust into it. And so usually when you have an aha moment, you think about something and you look for an answer, and there was no thinking about this. It just happened. And so in 1997, my only brother, EMIR Green, was murdered, shot 7 times in the back. And through my journey of healing, I looked for something to help me be able to go on with my life. And knowing about trauma just made sense. It was something that helped me get back to normalcy. And when I learned about it, the more I talked about it, the better I felt. And so I just thought, the aha moment came when I was like, oh, well then everybody needs to know about this. There's so much pain in the world. Personal pain, pain that people don't know about because they're personal stories and people don't often share. And usually when you're in pain, you don't want to talk about it. It's painful to talk about it, as you can see. But I've learned the more you talk about it, the better it makes you feel and the easier it is to go on with your life. Doesn't mean you forget. It doesn't mean the memory of the person is gone. It just means you're able to live with it. Well, it's twofold. We deal with a lot of people when they're at their worst times. And it just makes sense. The better we understand what moves human behavior, the easier it is for us to be able to do our job and to help the people that are in the pain. And then secondly, we see a lot of it, and there has to be some kind of effect on us. And we see that through alcoholism, suicide, just in our reaction to some of the things we deal with. And it helps us identify it within ourselves. And that just makes it easier for us to get help for ourselves. Changes around the city being more trauma-informed. Just people know about it. People are hearing about it. People are learning about it. That's the first step. Can I say that we are at the point where we are a trauma-informed city? No, not yet. There are still some people who don't believe, but I just think the more you get the information out there, the better it is for people to accept that help is needed, and maybe this is one of the ways to do it. Getting the knowledge and information out to the police officers themselves. We often get training and information about reaction to what we experience, like the suicides, how many suicides per year, or the fact that alcoholism is something that affects us greatly. I don't think what we get is why we need the help or how. Not to say the police department doesn't offer support. We have the Employee Assistance Program, which allows us to come talk about any issues we have, and then we work with Penn Behavioral Health to speak with counselors about personal issues. But I think oftentimes it's harder for people, police officers particularly, to accept that there is a problem, they're having a problem, and to say, well, what can I do about this? So I think being trauma-informed just helps you identify it with yourself. And then that's twofold, because if we're working with the public, we often ask the public to help us solve crimes, give us information about who commits the crime, and it helps build relationships when we can support them when they're going through pain. So the Victim Services Unit in the Philadelphia Police Department convenes a group of officers who are spread out throughout the city. There's a victim assistance officer in each police district, one in homicide, and one in special victims where we do the sexual crimes. And their whole purpose is to inform victims about services available to them throughout the city so that they can seek the help they need. And when I was assigned to the Victim Services Unit, I noticed that the protocol we had set in place did not really allow us to be sure the information was being received. What we did was we mailed the information to the victims. Sometimes we would have bad addresses. A lot of times the mailings would come back. So we weren't tracking it. And so I wrote a new protocol to ensure that the officers actually handed the information to the victim upon taking the report of a crime. And I presented it to the command level in the police department, and it was accepted, and it was instituted in 2015. Training for trauma in the police department hasn't yet started. So I got along with Linda Rich and Stephen Berkowitz to come up with a trauma-informed training for police officers. And so we've done 2 pilots so far to see the reactions that we would get. And the goal is to train the officers to actually do the training themselves for other officers. And that's a way of keeping it going throughout the police department so it never dies. And so we just did the 2nd pilot last Friday, and we had a good turnout. We included Drexel University Police and Philadelphia Housing Police, and it looks like the training with a few tweaks is possible, and so now the next stage is presenting it to the command level staff to see if it'll be accepted and finding funding. And I think it'll be accepted easier if we are able to find the funding. So we're working on that portion first. What I know is if we have a person suffering a mental crisis, a diagnosed mental illness, the officers are trained to de-escalate instead of us arresting them, sending them through criminal court where they don't belong, and getting them through to mental health court. The advice I would give to future captains would be to seek out community leaders. There are organizations and individuals in the community that are already involved in trauma-informed services, trauma-informed training, and so I would say seek them out, connect with them like the EMIR Healing Center, and spread that information on to the community. We are in a unique position to touch a lot of people as police officers, community members, individuals, businesses, and it's easier for us to help share the information and spread the word. And so I would say look to those community members, those community organizations, work with them to make the area, your local police district, more trauma-informed, share that with the officers and encourage them to spread the word. The EMIR Healing Center is the organization that was named after my brother, EMIR Green, and it originally stood for Every Murder is Real, ironically, and his name. And so they support families who have experienced homicide and violence. And people often say, well, how does that work because the victim is dead? Well, the issue is the family's still here. The family is devastated by a homicide and by violence. And so we support them to ensure that they are able to go on with their lives, and particularly children who tend to act out when they aren't getting the services they need and eventually become the problem of the police. So the EMIR Healing Center works with families, and it's a holistic approach in that they will say, usually we get a mother that comes in whose child was murdered, and they will say, come back, bring your whole family, bring your brother, your sister, your husband, your kids, bring their kids, so that we make sure we touch as many people as we can. And so the EMIR Healing Center has been working with me in the 16th District. We go to schools in the area and we talk about the effects of trauma on our family and how we are able to overcome it and still live successful lives. We usually tell them sometimes bad things happen to good people. It doesn't mean you can't keep being a good person. And it doesn't mean you can't be successful. And I think for children, that's important because children nowadays have experienced so much violence, and oftentimes they don't know what to do next. My brother was murdered in 1997. EMIR started officially in 1999 when we convened 2 conferences, one at Rosemont College and one at Temple University, and we called it drug-related homicide because that was the whole nexus behind what happened. And we don't want people to think because there was criminal activity involved that that means that person's life had no value, because it did. And so last year, EMIR serviced about 478 families. So the vital step, of course, would be partnering with the neighborhoods and the communities that already have the services available, and to train the officers about being trauma-informed, not just for their own personal benefit, but to help us build relationships in the community, and to service those that need the trauma-informed services. So I have 2 visions: what the future should look like 10 to 15 years from now and how the police department could be involved. So in my mind, there's this hub, a center, with trauma-informed services. And so nowadays, when people need services, and sometimes the services surpass what's trauma-informed related. They may need to get their water turned on because they haven't been to work because they're so traumatized, and so therefore they're not, they don't have an income, and their water gets turned off. Nowadays, you have to go to this center, and that center, and this center, and that center. And I often say, when you're in that state of trauma and grief, sometimes you have to run around so much that in the end, you're like, I don't even know what my need is. So if there was a huge hub, one center, a one-stop shopping for people to go to get all of the services they needed, would save them a lot of trouble and aggravation. It would give them the energy to do it. Once you find the energy to move on with your life after you've experienced homicides and violence, and you go to one place and you get help, and then you learn you have to go to another place and another place, you don't know if you have the mental stability to endure all of that. So we need one place for everybody. My second vision is for police officers to go to a home, to be so trained and so informed about the services available that they automatically say to the person, I see your children aren't in school. Let me find some services to help you get them back in school. I see you don't have much food. Let me find some services for you to get what you need, and then for us to do the follow-up. It sounds more like direct services, but in actuality, it's just a referral that needs to be followed up on to ensure the family's getting what they need. In the 16th District, I'm also working on a project. It's a building beautification project. It will involve the input of the community, and the community will help us. And so the idea is there's this thing called CPTED, Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. And the whole idea is the better the place looks, the more people respect it, and the less likely there is to be crime in the area. And so our building is dilapidated, it's old, it's run down. And so the plan is to be a part of this whole CPTED project and lead by example and get a mural on our building. And we have a large patio to have that be a welcoming space for people walking by, benches, seating, plants. And we've actually, the Philadelphia Water Department reached out to us. It's actually vital for a stormwater drain system, so we're going to include that. But the whole idea is to have the community involved in their input on what they would like to see, and help us build and paint, so it would be nice. And then my second project is a trust building project with the police, where we get together with community members and share each other's experiences to try to break barriers and get to know each other, and help that make it easier for us to live together in our communities. My sister and I went to Samuel L. Powell School at 36 in Spring Garden, 36 in Powellton. And we did the thing where we go around to the schools and talk about the violence and how it affected us. And there were 2 classes there run by Mr. Powers and Mr. Alberti. And we were connected to them by a young lady by the name of Kyra Atterbury. She works with a program called Needs Indeed. And we've developed such a wonderful relationship. These 2 classes of 4th graders, they came to my community event earlier this month, and now they have decided, they have been working on a series of discussions about violence as they have been greatly affected by it, and they have decided they want to do a March for Peace. And so I just think getting the kids on board and getting them to acknowledge the pain they've been through and then want to share it with other people so people will know the effect it has on them, it's powerful. They give you the ability to start whatever programs you want. Just depends on some legalities you have to check with the commissioner and his legal advisor. Like the trust building, we had to sign an MOU with, we're doing it with the Mount Vernon Manor and a BCJI grant. So we had to get them to sign off on it, and then, of course, the funding has to funnel through the police department. My idea, and the commissioner signed it. So